Well, a very warm welcome to everybody. You've just joined the Food and Fibre Plus workshop series, which is all about getting the specifics right. This is the final theme for today, and this theme is all about enhancing supply and value chains across Central Queensland, and we will be looking at how to improve our collaboration and looking for those collaborative opportunities across the Central Queensland greater region. So as always, the process of how we are going to be running this workshop today is the first part. I will be sharing with you a grounding exercise where we'll go back to some of the work that we did on the 6th of October, where we had the kickoff meeting, and I'll be summarising some of the things that we've heard from stakeholders across the greater region, and I'll be sharing with you some of the pain points and also what are the collaboration opportunities that those stakeholders and also participants at the kickoff meeting felt that we could be just starting to be collaborating better on when it comes to supply chains and value chains. I really want to stress though that these are just some ideas, and it's not a complete list by any means, and it's really to serve the purpose of being a springboard today. As we go into the workshop, each of you will be asked to contribute in a number of different ways using our virtual collaboration skills and tools. And we will be doing some exercises that are reflective, where we will be, typing down our responses and thoughts onto a shared whiteboard. We also will be having a breakout session where we get the chance to talk to each other and discuss and build upon those ideas. And then we'll also have some active listening whereby the spokesperson will share back on behalf of everybody, but everyone's always got that opportunity to add in and build by using the chat at any time. I do encourage and welcome the diversity of ideas. Everyone's ideas will be included. This is a very inclusive and a safe place, and we want to be respectful of that diversity, because in diversity, and as an innovator, I love diversity because it brings about that curiosity, trying to understand why we have different ideas, and through that diversity of ideas and opinions, often really great ideas and innovations can start to germinate. So please share openly, respectfully listen, and take that curious mindset and a growth mindset as we work through this today. So kicking through, the next on the agenda, therefore, is just to ground us all on what we talked about last time when we discovered supply chains and value chains across Central Queensland. So really we're looking from the Whitsundays right through to Longreach and beyond, and all the regions and all the Billawheeler, Emerald and everything in between. And so here are just some of the pain points that I heard when I conducted some stakeholder interviews. And as I've mentioned earlier, these are only some, so there's a lot more than that. And these are not my personal opinion. I'm just reflecting on what I've heard so far. So what are some of the pain points when we're thinking about supply chains and value chains? The centralised system. So this is one of the key challenges, that everything's funneling into Brisbane or maybe Toowoomba, and so we're missing out on opportunities in Central Queensland. There's concern about what happens when the subsidy runs out. So this is one of the drivers behind this, is the COVID impacts, obviously, without having the freight opportunities and the bellies or the passenger planes. So we've been propped up with the subsidies. So what is going to happen when those subsidies run out? And they've obviously been extended from when we first had these conversations. The lack of transparency. So by that, a lot of the conversations have come about the tracking and the ability to understand, well, where is freight and what is the freight task at any point of time. Value adding occurring in the cities opposed to in the regions across Central Queensland. And so the concerns there as a challenge is that the lost opportunity of value add, which would bring more jobs, more income to the regions, if that could be potentially decentralised a bit more. the whole chicken and egg story about infrastructure, about, well, we cannot expand if we don't know, if we don't have critical mass, but then we don't know if we've got critical mass if we don't have the data. And if you don't have the infrastructure, then it doesn't attract. So it was been this sort of like, you know, I don't know how to describe it better than but that's what I've been hearing. And you know, challenges around red tape. So I've heard some quotes of, you know, there's as many hoops to jump through as if we were, you know, building an agri-food processing facility in the Queen Street Mall. That was a quote. So you know, has it been adapted for regions across Central Queensland? Is potentially the pain point there. So they're just some pain point ideas. And as I said, this is from a number of different stakeholders and also from literature. And the opportunity for you all is to start thinking about those as a springboard. So just consider them right now, because you'll be asked to talk about these and to write about them. What else is missing when you look at that list of pain points? I'm sure there's many things missing. And but perhaps you want to validate some too when we go into some discussion points. You can say, actually, I really agreed with one of these, or disagree. That's all where collective brains trust here. So absolutely start thinking about those in that way. On the flip side, the sunny side of this, but where are the collaboration opportunities across Central Queensland? So how can we create more value by working together better on supply chain and value adding opportunities across Central Queensland? So again, here are just some of the ideas, and each of you will have the task to build upon these ideas so that we've got even more. So just some of them are here as a starting point and as a springboard to get you thinking about, well, what else could we do? So some of them was, how can we build business cases for critical mass? You know, if we could work together and collaborate better, can we then start going, we've actually got an infrastructure justification now, because we can see we've been working together and we've been able to, you know, create a business case here. Planning together after the IFAM subsidies, you know, so how, particularly for fresh produce or fresh, you know, how can we be, what's the next step? If it wasn't for the subsidy, how could we be protecting our opportunities to export in this way? Is it potentially, you know, prolonging shelf life of produce perhaps, or is it looking at alternative ways of physically transporting our goods? Digitized tracking, helping the goods flow faster. You know, if we can see and improve our visibility of it, can we reduce our inefficiencies, reduce our wastage, provide more evidence for that critical mass, which is going to help with infrastructure as well. Sharing projects, as an example, the forecasting piece, you know, looking into the future. If one region is doing this, could this be scaled across a number of regions? And mentoring, you know, peer-to-peer mentoring, and helping planners understand the different nuances for innovation in regional and rural areas, so that our planning processes are fit for purpose. So these are just some ideas, and by all means start thinking about how we can build upon these ideas. And if there's something that isn't sitting right, this is the opportunity to you know, share back. You know, constructive feedback is just as important as well. But this has really just been there as a springboard to spark further ideas as we head into the collaboration exercise. So 2 more slides before I hand back to you guys. So also on the 6th of October, we had a short poll at the end of, you know, just sharing what this theme is all about, which was that previous slide. And at the time we asked people to, you know, share with us what's your perceived significance of supply chains and value chains across Central Queensland. How important is this? of a score out of 10. And the 4 themes that we're looking at were all deemed obviously as important, which is why we're focused on these particular 4 themes. But just to put it into perspective, this had it did have a spread, and you can see that by where the mode is, and the mean was 8.24. So it was really, really very appealing, and there's a lot of energy for focus across this theme. So the final part for me is just a bit of a starting point of a draft problem statement. And the reason why we hone in on a problem statement is because it's a great way to focus the mind on what ideations and solutions can come. Because if a well-articulated problem is always a problem half solved. So we've started to work on this so that it can be that sort of bit of a framework for how we're going to find solutions for this into the future. So here are just some ideas that the project management team have started to distill rather than having a big long problem. So the lack of suitable physical, demographic, financial and economic data to understand the freight task. So that's sort of the blurriness of exactly what the freight task is, because we don't have that data, and the data cuts across a lot of things there. So the data is not aggregated to reflect the range of industries and across the whole region, and it's not necessarily demonstrating the critical mass. Inadequate technology systems to enable that digital tracking, and inadequate freight infrastructure, and that could go across all sorts of different types of modes of transport, roads, and whether it's port or air, road or other means as well. So that was a starting point. So at this point, I am going to be handing it over to all of you as part of our exercises, and we're going to get just as we have for the other themes, we're going to be really involved in actively participating in this workshop. So as always, we've got 3 workshop tasks that we're all going to be working on. So to focus in on that, we're going to be looking at what are those key challenges or the pain points. And then importantly, behind every challenge or pain point is there's some sort of a driving force. So this is the why. What's driving it? Is it a positive influence, or is it a negative influence that's causing us to change? So what is that driving force, and can we pinpoint what they are? Because the better understanding that we have of this sort of the problems, then the better we're going to be at solving them into the future. And then the third part, which is what I always think as the exciting part, is what are the collaborative opportunities that are worth us exploring further across all of Central Queensland when it comes to enhancing supply and value chains. So our first method is going to be the reflective method. And I'm just going to pause for a moment to see if anyone has got any questions before we move on from here. I can see Peter Hawkins has got his hand raised. Peter, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. Do you want us to focus on how things were pre-COVID, or how things currently are and should be looked at post-COVID?
I think look at it as is right now.
Right now?
The situation
cool.
right now. I will just refer back to either Alicia or Matt if you guys wanted to validate what I've just said there.
Yeah, I think that's fine, Jackie. Yeah, that's Peter. Yeah, reflect on both, I think, mate.
Okay, thank you. Just relevant for me with the key challenges more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks very much for asking, Peter. So, okay, so in terms of the methodology for this first part, I think most of you have been here. So we're going to use the annotate function on Zoom, which is this little pencil, and it's effectively means that we can, it's like we're all in a real room, but we're on a virtual whiteboard. So you can write up on the whiteboard and try and find a blank space, just like what you would if we were doing this in a real room. And as if you see ideas that you like, by all means use your stamps. You can tick things or put stars on stuff, or even love hearts if you really, really, really love something. Just go for it. So the first piece is, let's share on this virtual whiteboard what you think are the key challenges what are the blockages, what is stopping us from having, like, you know, the best supply and value chains in the world. You can also use the chat, but there's a great way for us to all just see visually. And you can use different colours, of course. I know blue and black are always favourites, but there's pink, there's red, green.
Jack, it's Matt here. I think some, like myself, are having trouble with the system actually shortening the sentence, or it's going offline as you're halfway through a sentence. If you just see a few of those, I think.
Yeah, maybe try use a different colour. So underneath format, just try a different colour there. Because sometimes it defaults to white. But if it still isn't working, then just use the chat and just, you know, write KC in front of it for key challenge. Some of the great thoughts that are coming through so far is, you know, we've got the distance to market, we are a long way away. We've got the skilled labour shortages, which is certainly an exacerbated problem at the moment. The lack of connection with investors, great one. Understanding the cross-sector linkages. We've got old technologies in our supply chains. Underutilisation of infrastructure. Backloads versus front loads. And our inability to work together. That's a big one. Loss of freshness. Businesses are not pivoting. Use people's thoughts as a springboard for you to add on to them. If you like, or if you resonate with something, then, you know, put a stamp next to it, or tick next to it, or add an extra comment next to the comment that has gone before. Because then we're doing this sort of piling on, and we're expanding our collective brain. There's a lot here. It's brilliant. So I'm going to ask you all just to put some stars or ticks on the things that other people have written that you really go, I agree with that. Try and pick at least one other thing that someone else has put down. Okay, I'm going to save this now in 5 seconds. So last chance to get your stamps, your ticks, or your comments up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great, I'm just saving that as a PDF, and I'm going to clear this. So our next reflective task on the whiteboard is to think about, well, what has actually caused this? So what are the driving forces, both the positive forces as well as the negative forces? So positive things, like the positive trend that we're wanting to shift towards. And the negatives are often things, what are we fearful of? If we don't make this change, it's just going to get worse. So what's forcing us to change? So negatives are things like, it might be the distance, or it could be we've got COVID, the impacts of COVID. But just try to ladder it up a bit too, so that it's not just one point, explain the point a bit too. So we've got some great things coming out here. We've got consumers changing habits. We've got making the most of the infrastructure we have rather than driving what is needed. So another driving force we've got here is the prioritisation of our transport, rail industry and manufacturing offshore. We need to look after our own backyards. We've got drought impacts. Technology is driving change. So if you've finished writing your own notes here, use this moment to read others and put ticks or stamps next to those that are really resonating with you. Okay, just 5 more seconds and then I'll close, I'll take a screenshot and close this one. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great, and now our final whiteboard exercise is to think about the sunny side, which is what are the collaborative opportunities across Central Queensland when it comes to enhancing our supply and value chains? What can we do better by working together? What are some of the activities, programs, actions that, if we did it on our own, it just wouldn't have the same impact? Or they may even be impossible to do on their own. They're so systemic that we need to be operating at an interregional level. Or you may also think about it could just be wasteful if you did it by yourself, that others could be benefiting. There's some entertaining ones going up there. We've got connect businesses along the supply chain to create new products. Lamb and lobster salami, anyone? We've got accept learnings from work of others. We don't have to duplicate all assessments. Bring in consistency too. Learnings from other regions. FAN and Far North Queensland Food Incubator. The culture of Australia is opposite to collaboration, social and cultural change. I know we're all writing at the same time, but try and find a blank space if we can. So if you've finished jotting down your thoughts on the collaborative opportunities, also take this moment to read what other people have said and use your stamps to indicate if there's an idea or a collaboration opportunity that you really resonate with. So we've got a tick there for sharing data across regions and across industries. Connectivity. There's a couple of ticks on mapping out the supply chains to assist with identifying blockages and value chain opportunities. Great, so just a few more seconds and I will take a screenshot of this one. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'll clear all. Great, well that concludes the whiteboard component, and the purpose of that was to get us all really thinking about it and reading and reflecting, which is really great before we go into the next part where we're going to be talking. So we've had that opportunity to gather our thoughts, we've listened, we've engaged our brain in that reflective way, and now we have the opportunity to talk about it and discuss and build upon those ideas even further. So we're going to be breaking out into 4 groups. We've got about 20 participants online at the moment, and they're going to be random, just like last time. So I apologize if I put all the industry people together and all the government people together. It's just how it falls. And but hopefully we'll get a good spread, and we'll have people spread from across the regions as well. So it's just we'll just let's see how it sort of randomly falls out. So the first task that you'll have is, as always, to appoint a spokesperson for your group. So that person has a really important role because they need to ensure that everybody has a say, and to ensure that you know, all of the concerns are voiced, and you're capturing the viewpoints of everybody in the team. So it's always great if an extrovert takes on that role, because then they can make sure that potentially the introverts are also having a say, because it's their job to make sure that everybody has a voice. So then talk about what are those key challenges, what's the why behind those key challenges, and then most importantly, what are the collaborative opportunities to work together better when it comes to enhancing our supply and value chains into the future. So any questions before I send you all off to your rooms? I'll just see if you do, just raise your hand. I'll just see. Looks like everyone's got the got the hang of it now. Okay, so off to the rooms, and right, there'll be 4 rooms. And you've got 15 minutes in each room. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you all had a great session in there. So just give me a quick thumbs up if it was a good talk. Awesome, awesome to hear. Okay, so we're going to do our share back part now. So this person who was the spokesperson for your group, I do need you to let me know who you are. So, and let's just get those people up. So if you were a spokesperson, I can see Peter Hawkins was. He's got his hand raised. Who else was a spokesperson? Okay, I've got Matt. Excellent. And who else was a spokesperson there?
Ben Baldwin was ours.
Ben, great. Thanks.
I had done a thumbs up there, but I'm not too sure if it comes through, but you know.
Yeah, sorry, I did see that thumbs up. Thanks very much, Ben. And there should be one more.
Leo from our group. Leo Markey.
Hi, Lou. Great. Okay, fantastic. All right, so we've got Peter, then Matt, then Ben, and then Lou. Awesome. Okay, well, I think we all know the drill. It's let's talk about the key challenges, the driving forces, the why behind that, and then what are the collaborative opportunities. So I'll stop sharing so that we can see our faces. And over to Peter first. Thanks, Peter.
All right, thank you. I think like everyone else, we probably could have done with 2 hours for that little breakout session. But to summarise where our conversation led, basically one of the key challenges that we identified is that the costs of regional logistics is quite significant. We've got quite a few cases that we discussed where that prove that point. So, for example, a producer in Mareeba recently was quoted, we heard a story that they were quoted a cheaper price to road transport from Mareeba to Brisbane than they were from Mareeba to Cairns Airport to take advantage of the plane going out of there. And Suzanne, I think this is correct, Suzanne, you told a story where it was half the price to get a dunny from Perth than it was to get it from Gladstone to the old Barcaldine. So quite interesting. Some of the reasons why, obviously the efficiencies of scale of the big businesses, so the distribution centres and the warehouses, that's a key driving force as to why we have such huge food miles. But we discussed some opportunities, particularly helping the transport sector with some of their costs and efficiencies of doing business. Explore regionalisation of distribution centres, so get them away from the focal point of Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, so that we can actually utilise some of those other key infrastructure points that we have. There's options to look at fuel pricing and electricity fairness for all. Obviously, fuel prices are quite significantly higher in regional areas than they are in metropolitan areas. The word subsidy was mentioned, and yes, that's certainly a hot topic in agriculture, but there's ways to look at that, not labelling it as a subsidy. And the case in point that I mentioned there was IFAM has actually proven that if you can coordinate the importation side of things, you're effectively subsidising the exporters. Rather than bring a plane in empty and sending it out full, the importation is actually making the overall costs cheaper for everyone. So it's a subsidy in a roundabout sort of a way. But certainly a topic that needs to be looked at for greater efficiencies of our freight logistics.
Excellent, Peter. So there were other people in your group. I can see you've already got a thumbs up from Suzanne there. Suzanne, have you got any builds from what Peter has said so far? No, he's done a good job. Okay, anyone else in Peter's group? You've always got the chat as well, so if you'd like to share back via the chat, that would be fantastic. And it's always really helpful for myself and Ananya, because we'll be sharing everything too. If you can, let us know in your words as well into the chat, would be really brilliant. Great. Okay, so next on the list is Matt. Over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Jack. The others argued that already presented too. So number 2 for me. Look, I hope I get all the points. We did run out of time. We would. I think the 3 of us agreed it's just a very complex matter to discuss. I mean, there are some critical drivers that we've already mentioned. The critical mass kept on coming up. The complexity of working out critical mass. And its drivers, the interruption of the best mapping you can do with supply chains and iodine value chains with pricing mechanisms. So it's, we're contemplating the often said problem is that we've got to improve or extend infrastructure, but if, the competing thing is pricing mechanisms. You can have the best infrastructure all the way to long reach, but if pricing mechanisms influence, market influence will, people might still drive products all the way down to Goondiwindi, for instance. So it's a hard one. Data, yes, we can get better at data, better characterisation for locals and dealing with societal change and some supply chains, value opportunities. But a competing comment was that we're already collecting a lot of that data. So maybe it's accessing data or getting that data out in various forms. I know for me too, we often say that we need to aggregate data, but some data like from ABS and AB needs to be disaggregated so we can paint that picture across the regions, within region and across regions. What we concluded really, it's such a complex, wicked problem that, and we did say this as part of the project management team, a lot of the supply value chain matters we've actually already discussed in the prior sessions, and some. So amongst the 3, there was talk about what we'll look. If we're looking at what we can do as inter-region to improve what's going on and understanding, do we pick on those priority matters like the provenance that was mentioned in earlier sessions? Looking at some of those social matters with water and how to improve, food security through local value adding and those type of things. So look, a bit of a mix. So the opportunities we saw, data, better characterisation, iodine choke points, better pathways, better points of value adding. Picking up on some of those issues, as I said, that were mentioned in prior sessions on agri-tourism through the water security and circular economies type stuff to help, identify those values. The comment was, look, maybe societal changes and demands overseas, containerisation is growing. Is there ways that we can do better business and innovation with on-farm storage? We do have roll-on, roll-off technology at the boat end. Can we do similar stuff at the farm end? Again, we're already mapping a lot of information like that, and that's being used to identify value chain areas. So maybe it's just getting that out there and people understanding it's there, and that might be a good use of a networking, collaborative sort of network. Thanks, that's all from me. My team might want to add to that.
I would just only clarify that just that provenance discussion, a lot of our chat was about driving to other places because the price was better, or driving a certain route because of that. And we talked about potentially some of those discussions around agri-tourism and provenance adding value, so then they don't have to drive there because the value is already there within the existing route. So then it makes the journey shorter, it adds value to the supply chain, it changes the logistics and freight routes. And so that there's potentially opportunities in there, which we've talked about earlier. Yeah.
Great, thanks Kimberly, and thank you Matt. So any other comments from Matt's group?
No, I think that's covered everything. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, Ben, your group's next.
Yeah, thanks. Steve was quite passionate in this area. You can see he was around I guess, looking at the consumers that we're setting to, so the consumers are shifting towards the more of the globally conscious consumer. So where it's the sustainability, health, provenance, all of that is on their mind. And so where we've in recent decades have moved towards mass production of fresh and processed foods, it's kind of shifting to more targeted, tailored diets, and then through COVID, it has actually kind of accelerated the want to see like a return to sovereign manufacturing, I suppose. And so when we look at supply chains, we're looking at a supply chain that's being built to suit that mass flow and mass production of foods and consumption of foods, and trying to kind of adapt it back almost to a like this to regional wants and needs, to targeted consumer wants and needs. And so arguably our supply chain within Queensland isn't broken per se. It works well for what it was designed for, but that's not where the consumers and things are moving to. And so we probably need to think a bit about if we were to design this from scratch, what would that look like? And so, and rather than trying to kind of retrofit something, something that's already in place, and from there you can build in the like traditionally for a long time our labour costs were quite significant, that were prohibitive to being able to play in economically in that mass food. But there's a number of things that change. I mean, technologies have moved, consumer ideas and wants have changed, and they're accepting potentially of in some circumstances of higher value products. And also the markets that we have traditionally gone into internationally have also grown and matured. So we could be targeting new markets that would accept a higher value product that would actually adapt and accommodate the higher labour costs. So you'd actually achieve your sustainability both economically and environmentally. And Stephen's working away trying to play his part in there, and I know that Alicia and Rob with their industry development pieces are always trying to push those two key parts and trying to balance industry wants with the broader societal and government pushes around the environment and things like that. So so there's some opportunities there where I think it can come together and create some real value for the industry, I think.
That's great, Ben. I think you touched on some very interesting points, particularly around, sorry, I'm just getting some echo there, particularly around the point when you were saying, if we were to design this from scratch, what would it look like, particularly if we're thinking about the consumers of the future and the technologies of the future, what are those opportunities? I think that's a great question that you're posing there, and also just looking at sustainability through a couple of lenses, not just environment, but also that economic sustainability is really key too. So thank you for bringing in some extra pieces to the conversation. Can I also ask of Ben's group, have we got some further builds? I can see quite a lot's coming through the chat there. We've got automation, we've got robotics, a lot of tech things coming through. What else was discussed in Ben's group that you guys would like to bring to the forum? Looks like it's all covered, Ben. Thumbs up, hey?
Yeah, I actually think Ben covered that off really well.
Awesome. Okay, brilliant. So Lou, over to you.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I suppose what I've been thinking about is what's different from what's already been discussed, so that we're not covering old ground. And I suppose the differences that we had within our group was basically meat supplies back in through abattoirs, and long distances, and how do you actually maintain a good quality product was probably the main area where you're looking at basically a bulk commodity where roughly 70% of it's going to be exported. Versus the stuff that Delva has been working on, which is about perishables in the Horty sector back into the Southeast Asian markets. And similar issues, but different ways of approaching it. And the key area that I picked up from Ananya's was about the need to make sure that whatever we do is we're looking at developing infrastructure and all of the supportive processes that we're really engaging well with the people that are in that production system and along the production lines, just to make sure that they're engaged and that is a real system. I suppose the other aspect that we covered a little bit was in and around combination of COVID-19 and the disruption with the Chinese markets at the moment and the impacts they're having on existing supply chains. And as a result of that, how they're showing up where the weaknesses are in the systems. And if we can start to look at where those weaknesses are and look at how they can be designed around, then we can probably start to look seriously at how our new supply chains look in a fairly systematic way. And I suppose within that, the thing that has been highlighted most recently, particularly in the Horty sector, is how reliant we are on overseas workers. And as a result of that, they're actually a significant part of our supply chain that we've tended to leave out of the system and not being seriously considering how to design our systems so that they're a lot more self-supporting. I don't know, any other key ones that I've missed, David? And Delva also sort of noted out of that we really need to be, when we're designing our supply chains, it's also about the relationships that we have with other countries and making sure that we've got fairly diverse markets that are then allowing us to have a lot more resistance to shocks within the system. So what have I missed, guys? What have I missed, Delva, Ananya, Phelpsy?
Not really, Lou. The important point that we need to think about de-risking our supply and value chains. So whether it is in terms of our international supply chain or domestic. So in the domestic area, so water's infrastructures are very important. And in the international area, of course, our relationships is very important. And we also need to think about the pandemic situations or any other situation, human-led or natural-led disasters. So how actually we can make better resiliency into the existing supply chains. And also instead of reactive actions and strategy, we need to think proactive. So we really need to invest more time, efforts, and money into this area, both for research and developments. And thank you, Liu. You did very well today.
Thanks, Delva. Ananya, Phelpsy? All good? All good. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Lou, and thank you, Delva, as well. Some really interesting extra points have come through there, and just of note, I think that the impact that COVID has had, and really exposing our overdependence on the overseas workers, I think was a great point, and the importance to have more diverse relationships with our international market so that we're building up our resilience is also key. And we're seeing that in a number of industries across Australia right at the moment. It's very, very a pointy point right now. So we have all shared back. We are about 5 minutes early, so I can open it up for a broader discussion. I can certainly refer back to our project leader, Matt McIntyre, to see if there's extra points that you would like to make here or discuss, or we can just go straight to the poll at this point.
Look, I think there's quite a few good comments have come just over the last minute or two on the chat system, and I think they're great comments. I'm not going to respond to it. They're all great comments, and you know, we'll talk a bit later about other opportunities. But no, I think they're great, especially from Dave Phelps there. Just really hit the key. One of the issues I've sort of noted too, that we were asked on the 6th of October to bring up the youth and broader human resources in rural remote areas, and so it's good that some of those chats are coming through, because we've got it in our documentation, but it needs to, you know, I think that's great that it's come out, that we need to. And I think Suzanne Thompson and another group made recommendations as well. That's our future. There are some great activities in the regions, but yeah, good points. Thanks, Dave and others, and Peter and Suzanne.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, the last part is where, as always, I'll do this poll, and it's, as always, we've pre-populated it, and it doesn't have all the great ideas that you've all been talking about. So there's always that catch-all box at the end, which is the other ideas. And since we have got just a few more minutes, I would really love to ask you all to jot those extra ideas of collaboration into the chat when I do the poll. So you'll see, obviously, vote on the poll, but really build upon that and just use this moment of reflection to share in that way. And if anyone would like to speak up, please just do. We're a small group, and so you can speak up. Let me share the poll. And that was the last one. Right. Okay, so the poll in question is, which collaboration opportunities across Central Queensland for enhancing supply and value chains appeals the most? You can choose all of them, none of them. And importantly, there is the other ideas that has come up today. So we just wanted to get you started. So there's 4 or 5 ideas there, and by all means, really start thinking about the other ideas, because there have been some great extra ideas that have been discussed, and use the chat function to capture those. And if possible, just put poll in front so that we know that that's where the ideas are coming from. I'm just going to end the poll now. So if you haven't voted already, last chance, but you can still add to the chat, obviously. So I'm ending it now, and I'll share the results. You can see that there's a lot of energy for value adding in the region. So that was certainly one of the points that Kimberly, you were making as well there. And it came through from quite a few of you. And I can see there's lots of ideas coming through as well on the chat. Okay, well, this concludes our workshops of all of the 4 themes. So we have covered so far agri-tourism way back in the morning at 9:45. It's been a big day. We then did circular economies. We then did supply chain, we did sustainable land management and water security, and we've just completed our enhancing our supply chains and value chains. So in conclusion today, kicking off at 4 o'clock, we will have a short recap and a wrap up of the day, and Matt and Alicia will be driving most of that. I'll do a short, recap. Here are the main things that we heard. And Matt will also be sharing with us what the next steps are for January, and we hope to continue your engagement. And on a personal note, I just want to say thank you all so much for being so actively involved in these workshops so far. So see you all at 4 o'clock for a quick wrap up, and in the meantime have a break, and we'll just put it on mute and see you then. And you can continue using the chat function right up until we close. Thank you.